Yeah, having this class back to back like this called for a third cup of coffee. So I start talking too fast, tell me to slow down. It's kicking in quite nice. It's an emergency situation. It is peppermint mocha from Starbucks, though. It's really good. Starbucks peppermint mocha. Got to get that holiday spirit going. I kind of skip the pumpkin spice and go for the peppermint mocha.
Oh, so you're going to be every single whole
pumpkin spice, but, you know, just my personal preference. It's going to be on the test, by the way. You want to write that down. Probably be a good bonus question.
I'm also not welcomed in Europe.
So I will let you guys know, I still haven't had a chance to look at those questions we brought last week from the last test. So when we conclude class today, I've got that on my to-do list, and I'll try to send you guys an email in regards to if you're receiving any extra points or not for the last test. I'll keep you posted on that. Okay. All right, we ready to conquer these lower extremities?
No.
I thought I was going to at least get one enthusiastic yes. I saw some dread on those faces, just like, oh. Hey, we're going to get through it, guys. We are going to spend some extra time on the anatomy in this chapter to make sure we do got it down, because this probably is going to be the most anatomy-heavy chapter that you've had thus far of anything, because there is a lot to go over in this chapter. So I implore you, if in any moment you feel I'm going too fast, I need to slow down, re-explain, clarify, just let me know. It's not going to hurt my feelings. I know it's a lot, and I want to make sure that we all have a good understanding on all this anatomy. And also, if it's just not making sense, please let me know, guys, if you need tutoring. As of now, the way I am kind of doing tutoring, and I'll let you know if this changes, is I'm doing a lot of the tutoring right now on Friday mornings from about 7 to 8. It's a really good time. I know it's early in the morning, but it's a really good time. If you need that one-on-one, I can take more than one person as well and make sure everyone gets ample attention. But for now, I'm tutoring on Fridays at 7. So please let me know if you need that. It's been very helpful for those that have already reached out, and I really encourage you to do that if you feel like you're falling behind. All right, let us get going here. Get your pencils ready. Have your textbook open if you have that as well. We're going to start on the lower extremity anatomy. Okay, so this is found in Chapter 6 of your Bontrager textbook. If you'd like to follow along, most of these images come directly out of your textbook.
You good? Talking about that.
And when we're talking about the lower limb, guys, we are referring primarily from the femur all the way down to the tips of our toes. Now you will see number 4 there does refer to the bones of the hip. Even though it's technically considered part of the lower limb, we're actually going to dedicate an entire chapter to the pelvis itself, pelvis and the hips. So we're not going to talk a lot about the pelvis yet. That comes in the next chapter, chapter 7. But we are going to focus from the femur, the knee, the leg, which includes the tibia and fibula, ankle joint, and the foot, each containing a lot of bones and a lot of landmarks. But do keep in mind, when we do refer to the lower limb in its entirety, it does also include the bones of the hip. The bones of the hip would be the most proximal portion. The toes would be the most distal portion of our lower limbs. We hear a lot of those directional terms as well. When we talk about the leg specifically, the leg is made up of 2 very prominent bones. That's what we call the tibia and the fibula. Let me say it again, the tibia and the fibula. The tibia and the fibula. Why do I say that? Because people love to mix those up. They'll say tibula and fibia. It's fibula and tibia. The fibula is on the lateral aspect of the leg. The The tibia is on the medial aspect of the leg. The fibula is thinner. The tibia is wider. Now, how can you tell a difference? Because I swear people mix those two bones up a lot. Well, the fibula always looks a lot thinner, smaller. It's little versus the tibia, which is wider and larger. When you hear the word fibula, let's break that word down. You know what a fib is? A lie? Usually you don't like to tell a big lie, you tell a little lie. So you tell a little fib. The fibula is little. So when you see the little skinny bone, think of a little fib or a little lie. That's our fibula. It's the little bone on the lateral side. Silly, silly wording, but it'll help you remember that. A little fib. We tell little lies. Hopefully no one tells me any lies here, but if you're telling me a lie, it's probably going to be a little fib or a little lie. Try to get by with something. That would be our fibula, the smaller or skinny bone on the lower leg on that lateral aspect. And that tibia and fibula is important because the tibia and fibula is going to form the portion of the knee joints and also is going to form a portion of the ankle joints. There's a lot of little stuff in those two joints that we're going to talk about going through this anatomy. Also, important note, the femur. So I'm going to do a Heimlich maneuver on me. I'm going to choke on my coffee. The femur is the longest bone in the human body, also the strongest bone in the human body. Why? Because it holds all of the body's weight upon that bone. The femur is going to be the longest, largest bone in the human body. And I'm sure, as you can see, that femur, it does hook into that pelvis to form, of course, our hip joint. Now, one thing that's always driven me crazy ever since I started learning anatomy is you'll always hear people come in and say, I broke my hip. Broke my hip. I broke my hip. You know, they're not actually breaking their hip. They're either breaking their pelvis or their femur. There's a hip joint, but more often than not, when they say I broke my hip, they actually broke their femur. It's always driven me crazy. I'm like, you didn't break your hip, you broke your femur. I don't say it to patients, but I've said it to family members. You broke your femur, not your hip. Get it right. Let's be specific. It's kind of a bad thing when you learn anatomy, you start becoming kind of a smart aleck to your family a little bit, especially when they say stuff wrong. At least in my dinner table. What do you talk about at your dinner table? Talk about your day. We talk about anatomy at my dinner table. My kids learn all kinds of crazy stuff from it. That's our dinner conversations. So let's start with the foot, guys. We're going to start all the way on the distal aspect and make our way up to the proximal aspect back towards that pelvis. So the bones of the foot, there are quite a few. In total, there are 26 bones in the foot. 26 total. And we do need to know all 26 of those bones. Yes, I see some of your eyes getting big. We do need to know all 26 bones of the foot. The foot is further divided into 3 sections, and a couple of those should look a little bit familiar to you. The first section, closest to the ankle, closest to the heel, is what we call the tarsal bones. Very similar to the carpal bones in our wrists, but in the foot, they're called tarsal bones. We have 7 of those total. In the mid aspect of the foot, we have the metatarsals. Should sound familiar to what? Metacarpals. But in the foot, we're going to refer to them as metatarsals. The only section that is going to share the same name as our fingers is going to be the phalanges, and there are 14 total phalanges. 5 metatarsals, 14 phalanges, 7 tarsals for a total of 26 bones in the foot. Remember, phalanges, like our fingers, the toes are also called phalanges. Now, don't mix those up because time and time again I see each year when we're getting to the labeling, what do people do when they try to label this section right here? They're going to say, oh, well, Mr. Donahue, that's the second metacarpal. Well, no, it's not a metacarpal. It's a metatarsal. Foot is tarsal. Wrist is carpal. Carpal versus tarsal. Make sure you identify between those two. Now we go over here to our phalanges specifically, and we see some more familiar words. You guys remember these? I hope these are still fresh. We have what? We have a distal phalanx, middle phalanx, and proximal phalanx, just like the phalanges in the fingers, exact same concepts, except for the big toe, which is just like the thumb in that it has only a distal phalanx and a proximal phalanx. Now, let me ask you this. Based on that concept, I know we haven't got to joints yet, but what do you think that the big toe shares that the thumb has in regards to a joint?
The Sesamoid Bone?
Yes, we haven't got to that yet, but I'm talking about joints. You are correct.
Mtp Joints?
Just the IP.
The IP joints. Therefore, those joint names that you guys remember from the phalanges of the finger are going to be the same joint names on the toes, the phalanges on the toes. So that's a little less to remember, but do make sure you don't forget when we talk about the metatarsals versus metacarpals, that name changes. When we talk about tarsals versus carpals, that name also changes. Now, let us go, and there are 5, of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, when we're labeling this, guys, let's say this is a right foot, by the way. If I pointed to this right here, it would tell me that's the right distal phalanx of the second digit. They're called digits, by the way, too. Toes digits, fingers digits, toes phalanges, fingers phalanges. So the distal phalanx of the second digit, the right distal phalanx of the second digit.
Do you divide the phalanges, like the distal phalanges? Do you break it down even more, like head, body, base?
You are correct. Yes, we do.
Okay.
I'm sad to say yes. I know it's more to remember. Yes, we do. We do. Same as the fingers. Same concept. Now you will see, let's go down to the metatarsals here, guys. Just like what Jonathan just said, it's the same thing for the metatarsals. If you look right here on the 5th metatarsal, we have a head, a body or shaft, and a base. Let's go to the 4th. Head, body, base. Head, body, base. Head, body, base, and so on. Same concept. Now, when it comes to the foot, talking about the 5th metatarsal specifically, this is a very important landmark because we see this on almost every view of the foot, as well as our calcaneus views. The 5th metatarsal has a very peculiar protrusion on its proximal aspect called the tuberosity of the 5th metatarsal. That's this area right here where my laser pointer is. It's a protrusion off the base of that 5th metatarsal. That's what we call the tuberosity of the 5th metatarsal. You want to remember that. It's a very prominent landmark. And then, of course, our 7 tarsal bones, we're going to name all these in just a second. That's our 3 major divisions of the foot. Phalanges, metatarsals, tarsals, for a total of 26 bones. Are y'all feeling like Thor here? Your head exploding? That's why I put that there. I gotta tell you how you're all feeling right now. That was pretty accurate. It's gonna make more sense. The heroes always win in the end, right? The heroes always win. You're gonna get through it.
Not in that movie, they don't.
Ooh, that's a good point. They do all lose that movie, don't they? But they come back and win, right? In the next movie.
Not really.
Really?
We still lost, man.
I mean, we lost a lot.
I'm still salty about it.
Dude, that movie made me so mad. I didn't watch the last.
He lost everyone.
That's a great movie. I'll have to show you guys. I actually have an Infinity Gauntlet somewhere in here. I have a replica of it. I'll have to show that to you guys when I find it. I got everything packed up still because we're about to move in a couple of weeks.
Don't talk about moving. I helped my phone move yesterday, and it was we started at 12. We ended at 10 p.m. I'm so tired.
You know what? It doesn't matter how many times you do it. Moving always sucks. I hate it. But in this aspect, I'm ready because my move has been delayed so many times at this point. I'm just ready to get moved. It's finally happening second week of November, though. Okay, let's talk about the joints now. So like I just said, guys, the joint names are going to be pretty similar with the exception of a few here. So what am I talking about? Let's start with the ones we do know. On the most distal aspect of our phalanges, of course, like I just said, when we talk about the first digit here, it does have only an interphalangeal joint, just like the thumb. Just like the thumb, interphalangeal joints. But when we talk about digits 2 through 5 of the toes, they each have a DIP and a PIP. That should still be familiar. Distal interphalangeal joint, proximal interphalangeal joint. Exact same concept as the fingers. same exact name. Each of those toes from 2 to 5 have a DIP and a PIP. The first toe only has an IP. And yes, you can use the abbreviations just like before for those digits specifically. Now, here's what the names are going to change a little bit as we move more proximal towards the ankle. When we talk about the joint between the phalanges and the metatarsals, that's going to be what we call the Mtp joint. Metatarsophalangeal joint. It's in the name of what we're connecting. The metatarsals to the phalanges. Therefore, it's our metatarsophalangeal joint, MTP. Moving more proximal, where we connect the tarsals to the metatarsals, taking the two names and combining, what do you think that is? Tarso-metatarsal joints, or TMT joints. Tarso-metatarsal joint, connecting the tarsals to the metatarsal joints. So in the foot, we have an IP, DIP, PIP, MTP, and a TMT. And that's going to be for each of these 1 through 5. So if I pointed right here, guys, that would be the first TMT joint, the second TMT, third, fourth, fifth. Moving distally, the first MTP, second, third, fourth, fifth. And of course, same concept, IP of the first digit, DIP 2, 3, 4, 5, PIP 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to look at these on some x-rays because I don't know if any of you guys have done toes or feet yet in the hospital. Toes can be kind of gnarled up. You ever seen people's toes? They're kind of gross. Some people have some really gnarled toes, and the joints can be a little bit harder to see, but they are still all there, just like with the fingers. Now, looking here at the lateral view of the foot looks kind of funny when it's in a lateral view. Always that kind of looks like a weapon or something, so you could stab somebody with it. Don't be stabbing anybody with a foot bone, by the way. It's a bad idea. But let's look at these joints from that lateral view. Here's that TMT once again. It's connecting the tarsal bones to the metatarsal, TMT. Here's our MTPs, metatarsophalangeal joint. And then we still see our IP on the first toe and the DIP and PIP on 2 through 5. We'll see what those look like on x-rays when we get to that point. And I forget who pointed it out, but you were correct. There is a sesamoid bone. In fact, there's 2 sesamoid bones on that first digit of the toes. That first digit, that very first phalange. There are 2 sesamoid bones. You can see it in the lateral view here. We can also see it on an AP foot when we look at the x-ray because they are superimposed, but they're typically right here where I have my cursor on the metatarsal, first metatarsal. Now, something else to write down, because I don't want this to throw you off if you're ever in a hospital and you see a doctor refer to it as such. There is a specific name that the first digit or the big toe goes by besides phalange and digit or big toe. There's a universal.
Alex.
Hey, that's cheating. You already knew that from last year. Well, Tracy just spoiled that for you. Another name that the big toe goes by is hallux, Halux. So if you ever see a doctor that says, I want a hallux x-ray, they're referring to an x-ray of the big toe specifically. It's the Halux, hallux.
Not cheating. I just remembered.
All right, fair enough. I'm glad it stuck with you. So we're going to break down what kind of joints these are as well, because as with everything, guys, these are specific types of joints, and we got to label them accordingly as well as we move through here. Still with me, guys? We're still good? All right. Speaking of that, there's those sesamoid bones. So like I just said, we can visualize those sesamoid bones very clearly on an AP view of the foot. They're typically right here on this metatarsal, on the distal end of that first metatarsal, with 2 little round seeds, like sesame seeds once again. And if you remember, what is the point of sesamoid bones? They're embedded with tendons, specifically in the foot here. The tendons of the foot connect to those sesamoid bones and help us move that foot around. And it's also found on that plantar surface. Do remember, we talk about those directional turns once again when we talk about the bottom side of the foot. I'm not going to put my foot on the screen here. It might scare you all away. If you talk about the foot, guys, the bottom of the foot is the plantar surface of the foot. On that subject, let me warn you guys, because I know some of us are self-conscious about our feet. You're about to have lab this week, and yes, you are expected to take your socks off for these foot x-rays. So if you need to get your pedicures or whatever done, that's a warning for you. You do have to take your socks off and show your toes off and feet off for these practice exams coming up. I'd give you a warning this time. I didn't give my students a warning last time. They're like, "Are you crazy, Mr. Donahue? I got to take my socks off?" Yes. How are you going to get an accurate positioning with your sock on? So yeah, whatever you got to do to pretty up your toes, you got a warning. Yeah, it's the plantar surface when we talk about the bottom of the foot. Top would be the dorsal surface of the foot. And guys, clip your toenails. I'm going to pick on the guys too. Clip your toenails, guys. No one wants to see that. It's disgusting. Guys are notorious for not clipping their toenails. Clip your toenails, guys. Come on. All right, let's talk about those tarsal bones. So just like the wrist, guys, when we talk about the ankle area, the proximal area of the foot, we have the tarsal bones. Very important to learn these tarsal bones. Why? Let me tell you, the registry loves asking about tarsal bones. Almost every person that's taken a registry has told me, "Mr. Donahue, they always put those tarsal bones on there. Make sure you know exactly where these are by name, exact location. They're going to throw that at you." So what are those tarsal bones? That's going to be the calcaneus, the cuboid. You'll see cuneiforms. There are 3, each with their own specific name: navicular and talus. Oh, wait, don't do it yet, Tracy. I'll see if you remember that too. Don't do the, you know what I'm about to talk about, right? Yeah, okay. Let's start with the calcaneus. Calcaneus is going to be the most proximal of all the tarsal bones. It's also the largest of all the tarsal bones. That's where your heel is located, by the way. Your heel is mostly comprised of the calcaneus. On top of the calcaneus is the second largest tarsal bone that we call the talus. The talus is what connects our tibia and fibula to the foot, forming our ankle joints. The talus. Now, in the middle, towards the medial aspect, is my favorite of the tarsal bones that we call the navicular. Tracy, how do you remember navicular?
I don't know. I just remember.
Oh, you remembered hallux, but you don't remember the navicular thing? Oh, come on. I'm hurt. I'm really hurt. Okay, so the navicular, guys, here's how I always have everyone remember navicular. And everyone always did this during the tests. Navicular is rainbow shaped. It goes in an arch. So I always say go like this: navicular, navicular, navicular.
Now I remember.
Okay. The navicular looks like a rainbow. So when you hear the word navicular, think of a rainbow or an arch. It looks just like that. You know, on the x-rays, it's arched. So navicular is the rainbow or the arch-shaped tarsal bone in the middle of the foot. That's on the medial aspect of the foot, by the way. On the lateral aspect of the the lateral aspect of the foam of the foot, Lord Jesus, what am I talking about? The lateral aspect of the foot is the cuboid tarsal bone. Now, an easy way to remember the cuboid not only is on the lateral aspect, but it's also cube-shaped. It looks like a big square cube. Therefore, it's called the cuboid. That's on the lateral aspect. And then our 3 cuneiforms. Now, all 3 of these are called cuneiforms, but they have another word in front of them based on their location. So let me start on the medial side here. This is what we call the medial cuneiform. In the middle is the intermediate cuneiform. Intermediate is another way to say middle. If you need to write the word intermediate. And on the lateral aspect is the lateral cuneiform. So medial, intermediate, lateral, cuneiform. For a total of 3 cuneiforms. I guess, no, you can't say middle. You have to say intermediate. It's the proper terminology. So I don't know, when these guys wrote these words, I guess they ran out of fancy words and just gave them all the same name and then added a directional term in front of it. But yeah, medial, intermediate, and lateral cuneiform. Not middle. Do not write middle cuneiform. That's incorrect.
Can we number them? Can we number them like first, second, third?
No, it has to be medial, intermediate, or lateral. They're not numbered. That's a good question, by the way, though. So probably the most notorious ones that people miss are those three cuneiforms in the cuboid. Navicular, you always remember that's the arch. Talus is closest to the ankle. Calcaneus is the heel. But know those three cuneiforms and that cube-shaped cuboid on that most lateral aspect. More often than not, people accidentally label this as a lateral cuneiform. But the lateral cuneiform is actually just medial to that cuboid. Cuboid's the most lateral aspect of those tarsal bones. By the way, what was that little protrusion there called on that metatarsal?
Tuberosity.
Very good. Don't forget that. That's very important. Don't forget that. Now, if you're having a little bit more trouble, always come up with a nice mnemonic guide. It's a great way to remember those tarsals or carpal bones. Well, this is kind of appropriate because we're getting closer to Christmas. Come to Colorado the next 3 Christmases to label all those tarsal bones. Come, Calcaneus, 2, Talus, Colorado, Cuboid, next, Navicular, 3 Christmases for 3 cuneiforms. A little bit of an easy little statement there. You memorize that statement, you can always name your tarsal bones. Write that sentence down. Get to your registry 2 years from now, write that statement down, list your tarsal bones, and you're good to go because they're going to ask you about those tarsal bones. And what's the 3 names for the cuneiforms?
Medial, intermediate, and lateral.
Very good. Very good. And what's another name for the big toe?
It starts with the
Alex.
Hallux. Good. Good. All right, so let's break down the calcaneus because, yes, some of these tarsal bones have their own anatomy. I'm so sorry, but yes, it's true. This is the calcaneus by itself with all the other bones removed from it. If I took that heel bone out of the foot and was looking down on top of it, this is the view I'd be looking at. In other words, this is where our tib fib would fit right here to form the ankle. You see my cursor? That's the ankle joint right there. So let's start with the surfaces. These are very important to know. The calcaneus has 3 articular surfaces. It has the anterior articular surface at the top right here, the middle articular surface, and the posterior articular surface. Why is that important? Because those 3 surfaces are what form our ankle joints. That's the connection points for the tibia and the fibula. I'm sorry, not the tibia, for the talus. The talus. Don't write what I just said. The talus, because the talus fits on top of the calcaneus to form that ankle joint right above it. So the talus fits on top of the calcaneus on those 3 articular surfaces. That's going to form what we call a talocalcanear joint. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. So anterior articular surface, middle articular surface, posterior articular surface are the connection points for the talus and the calcaneus to come together to form a talocalcanear joint. Now I am going to cross some of these off because you won't see those on X-ray. I'll make this a little simpler for you. You don't need to know this one right here because you can't see that. You do want to know your surfaces. We do want to know this protrusion right here on the lateral aspect of the calcaneus. This is what we call the peroneal trochlea, or I like this word a lot better. You can use this one too, the trochlear process. A little bit easier to remember. Trochlear process is the protrusion on the lateral side of the calcaneus. And when we do our calcaneus x-rays, they look a lot like this image right here when we're looking at it, so we can visualize that on an x-ray. That's going to be the trochlear process. Sounds a lot like the trochlea in the elbow, right? Very similar. We also have a lateral process. Now, don't mix these up because this is also on the lateral side. When we look at the superior aspect here of the calcaneus, this is the trochlear process, but closer to the bottom of the heel. The inferior aspect is the lateral process on the lateral side of the calcaneus. There's a trochlear process and a lateral process. Then as we move down here, on the most inferior aspect of the calcaneus, and we can see this very clear on our x-rays, this is called the calcaneal tuberosity. I know that says just tuberosity right there. I need you to make sure you label it as a calcaneal tuberosity. Why? We have tuberosities at other parts of our body, correct? In fact, we just talked about a couple tuberosities. Where were those at? I hope you remember where those are at.
The lateral side of that foot at the 5th metatarsal.
Yes, where else? Where else? Where else do we have tuberosities?
On the humerus.
In our ankle.
On the humerus, in the shoulder, So because we have so many tuberosities, we have to be specific about what tuberosity we talk about. Therefore, if I point to that on an x-ray, and I'll show you what it looks like on x-rays, make sure you label that as a calcaneal tuberosity. Now we have a medial process. Where's that found? The medial aspect. And one way to identify that on x-ray, because your x-rays look very similar to this image, the medial aspect always has a very deep indentation right here. Curves very sharply, like a big C. When you see that big C indentation, you know that's the medial side of that calcaneus. Therefore, that would be the medial process of the calcaneus. Now, you guys always know I have my favorite words. I've already told you about the navicular, but the calcaneus has a beautiful word, and it is important to know. It's a mouthful, but that's this wonderful word we see right here. This is a protrusion on the medial aspect of the calcaneus towards the superior side, right here specifically. This is what we call the sustentaculum tali. Yes, you do need to know that whole word, and I'm sorry there's no abbreviations for it. The sustentaculum tali is on the superior and medial aspect of the calcaneus. It is a protrusion. ST. No, you can't write ST. That would not be full credit. I'm sorry. The sustentaculum tali, we can see that on x-rays. So the only one you don't need to know, guys, is this calcaneal sulcus right here. All these other ones, though, make sure you know those portions of the calcaneus because we can see them very clearly on our x-rays. Especially this one right here. I love that piece of anatomy right there.
Is that the right or the left calcaneus?
That is, hang on, that's a left.
It is left? Okay. I thought
Yes.
so. The book has it labeled right, but it looked confusing to me.
That is left. You need to change that in your book. It's a left calcaneus.
Okay.
How we can tell?
Because you look at the lateral side, if I'm looking, this is like I'm looking straight down at the foot. If I was looking straight down at my foot, and we're talking about the lateral side, this would have to be my left foot if I'm looking straight down at it. See what I'm talking about? But you wouldn't have to label that on a diagram. But just out of curiosity, yes, that is a left.
So is that tuberosity like the heel?
That is the yeah. That's the bottom of your heel.
And, okay, so that interior articular surface is like towards the toes. Interior.
Correct.
Okay,
Very
I see
good
it
question.
now in the medial lateral.
Correct. So bad drawing, but if you imagine your toes, kind of very, very bad drawing, but you get the idea. Yes, technically though, Naomi, just so you don't misunderstand, technically the entire calcaneus is the heel. This would be the bottom of your heel. Very, very tip bottom of it. Where that tuberosity is. Okay, so let's talk about those facets a little more. If you remember, we talked about those 3 facets on the calcaneus. And if you remember what I said, those are the 3. Yeah, the book says left. It does say left. Who told me it said it was right?
I think because we have different editions. Mine is the 6th edition. I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what
it should be left. So
mine's the 9th edition,
Yeah.
and it's figure 6.6 on page 214, and it lists it as the right calcaneus.
Okay, that's a typo. Make sure you write that's left.
Okay.
Okay. Talking about those connection points again, guys. If you remember the 3 facets we just named, at posterior, middle, and interior, those are those connection points of the talus to the calcaneus, which we see right here on this diagram. Here was our calcaneus we just looked at. This is the calcaneus in a lateral view, by the way. We're putting the talus on top of it, and it connects to these 3 facets, the posterior, middle, and interior, to form the talocalcaneal joints. Talocalcaneal joints. Once again, with joints, think of the 2 bones connecting. That's within the word of the joint. Talus connects to calcaneus to form the talocalcaneal joint. Now, here's the other tarsal bones we just spoke of. Here's the navicular in a lateral view, that arched navicular. Here's that cuboid, the cube-shaped one. It doesn't look like a cube in the lateral, by the way, but it looks more like a cube on the AP view. But we also have a very important piece of anatomy right here that I want you guys to put a big star on. In the middle, between the calcaneus and the talus, is a very prominent hole. And you can see it very clearly on an X-ray in a lateral view. It looks like a big black hole. That's what we call the sinus tarsi. The sinus tarsi. And that is only visualized, for the most part, on lateral views. And it does look like a big black hole on the lateral side of the foot. Sinus tarsi. It can also be called the tarsal sinus. I choose to say sinus tarsi. That's the most common terminology. If you look here at the talus, this is what I was talking about earlier, where you see this little bit of cartilage. The very top of the talus is where that tibia and fibula is going to connect to make the ankle joint. The ankle joint would be right here on top of this foot. And by the way, look at this lateral aspect of the calcaneus. You know how we just talked about that calcaneal tuberosity? This is the calcaneal tuberosity right here from a lateral view. As far as the anatomy of the calcaneus, that's what you're going to visualize in a lateral view, is that calcaneal tuberosity. Those other points, like the sustentaculum tali, the tubercles, you're not going to see those on a lateral view. So on a lateral view of the calcaneus, you will only see talocalcaneal joints and the calcaneal tuberosity specifically. Of course, that sinus tarsi in the middle there.
On the exam, do you want us to put calcaneus tuberosity?
Yes, you need to write calcaneal tuberosity. Left or right, by the way. Left or right, calcaneal tuberosity. And this is just showing you those facets from a lateral view. There would be our posterior facet, middle facet, anterior facet. Posterior, middle, anterior. And that's that connection point between the talus and the calcaneus, form the talocalcaneal joint. All right, it's just showing those carpal bones in conjunction with the other piece of anatomy we've already named. There, of course, is our cuneiforms once again, the medial, intermediate, and lateral. By the way, you do see numbers there, but you cannot label those with numbers. You do need to say medial cuneiform, intermediate cuneiform, and lateral cuneiform. It's just showing you the order, 1, 2, and 3, from medial to lateral. Cuboid, navicular with the arch, talus right on top, and calcaneus on the bottom. The calcaneal tuberosity jutting out right here. And this is looking at all in a lateral aspect one more time. There's our talus on top of the foot where the ankle joint is formed. Calcaneus right underneath the talus or inferior to the talus. Navicular is anterior to the talus. Medial cuneiform, intermediate cuneiform right here. And we'll see what these look like on x-rays, and they look very similar on the x-rays we're going to look at. And what's that joint between the talus and the calcaneus called?
Sinus tarsal.
What's the joint? The joints.
Calcaneal joint.
Calcaneal joints. And the little hole is called, what Tracy just said, the sinus tarsi. Sinus tarsi is a landmark. Calcaneal joint is a joint. And I'll specify that as usual, whether I'm looking for a landmark or a joint. And what's the joint between the tarsal bone and the metatarsal here called?
First TMT.
First TMT, you are correct. First TMT. What will be the joint up here?
Second MTP.
Mtp.
The MTP, correct. Second MTP. Metatarsophalangeal joints. Okay, so when we talk about the foot, it has 3 distinct arches. You need to know what those 3 are by name. We have what's called the medial arch, the longitudinal arch, or the transverse arch. The medial arch is where the foot arches on the medial side. We all know how our feet arch. Lateral arch is the arch found on the foot on the lateral aspect, close to the 5th digit. The transverse arch is if I was looking straight at my foot. Like if you look at my fingers, if this were my toes, I'm looking straight towards my foot. That's the transverse arch because the foot does kind of curve and arch when we're looking straight at it. That's what we see right here on this last picture down here. Transverse arch. 3 major arches: the medial, the longitudinal, and the transverse. And just simply referring to how the foot arches in the middle on that plantar surface. So let's talk about our ankle joint now. We've finished the foot area. We're going to move a little bit more proximal towards the actual ankle joints. Now, like I said before, the ankle joint is composed of 3 major bones. It's going to be the tibia, the fibula, and the talus. All 3 of those come together to form our ankle joints: tibia, fibula, and the talus. The talus is the only tarsal bone that the tibia and fibula connect to. Talus is the only tarsal bone that the tibia and fibula connect to form that ankle joint. Now we're going to start this picture on the bottom here. Once again, if you remember that smaller bone, the thin one, you tell a little fib, that's our fibula. The larger one is the tibia, which is found right here. It's a very wide bone. And there's that talus down here that we just talked about as part of those tarsal bones. Now, before I start going over this anatomy, we will see this term used quite often. When we talk about the ankle joint, it can also be referred to as what we call the Mortise Joints. M-O-R-T-I-S-E, the Mortise Joints. Now, there's 2 very prominent landmarks on our medial and lateral ankle. Great landmarks that we have to palpate. If you feel on your own foot, I don't know if anyone's able to get to their foot, but there are 2 very distinct protrusions on your ankle on the lateral and medial side, very similar to those epicondyles on the elbow joints. There are 2 very distinct protrusions on your feet on that ankle joint. There's a medial and lateral, almost feel like a little ball on the skin, a little rounded area. That's our lateral and medial malleoli, or malleolus singular. On the lateral aspect of the ankle, you can palpate this yourself once again. This is what we call the lateral malleolus. On the medial side, which you can also palpate, is the medial Malleolus. It's those two protrusions on your ankle. I'm palpating mine myself right now. On your ankle, there's a medial and lateral malleolus. It's that protrusion on your ankle joint, very similar to those epicondyles found in the elbow. Now, on the most distal surface of the tibia is a flat area that connects the talus. Here's this ankle joint or Mortise joint, but right above it, on the distal aspect of our tibia, is what we call the tibial platfon. Tibial platfon. It's a flat area on the most distal aspect of the tibia. Tibial platfon. There's also on the lateral side of the tibia, an interior tubercle that protrudes right here, close to the fibula. And there's also a joint right here, but we're going to get to that in a little bit. Based on our naming of joints, if I asked you what joint is connecting right here, what would you tell me to think? Get your two bones here.
Distal tibia or Tibiofibular.
You're on the right track. That would be the distal tibiofibular joints.
Okay.
Again, when it comes to those joints, always look at what two bones are connected. And more often than not, the name is found between those two bones connecting. That'll be a distal tibiofibular joints. So moving over here to this top picture, this is looking at the ankle joint in a lateral view. You see the lateral malleolus, which is found right down here. So we're looking at the fibula right here, the lateral malleolus. There's that anterior tubercle, the tibia. Tibia and fibula are superimposed. Anytime we have the leg in a lateral view, tibia and fibula should be superimposed for it to be a true lateral. Tibia and fibula must always be superimposed for a true lateral. And of course, there's that talus once again. Those ankle joints are formed. Someone's dropping a very big package off at my front door right now. I'm trying to see what's going on here in my window. So I got something from Amazon. Always great when those Amazon packages come in. But yeah, for a true lateral, whether we're looking at the tib fib or the ankle, true laterals, the tibia and fibula should be superimposed upon each other. And there's that same view right there. Distal fibula or posterior half of tibia on a true lateral. But based on some of the stuff we've talked about here, let's see how we do on some of this anatomy real quick. This would be a lateral view of an ankle on this x-ray right here. Now, based on what I just told you, would you say that is a true lateral or just a pretty decent lateral? What do you think?
Decent?
Decent.
It's decent. So it's not repeatable by any means, but a true lateral, we would see that tibia and fibula look a little bit more like this picture here, would be a little bit more superimposed on that distal aspect. We have a little bit more space here than I would like. So this ankle is not in a true lateral. Could be a little bit better. I think the foot's probably a little bit oblique going on there. But for a true lateral, you want this distal area to be as superimposed as possible on the tibia and fibula, close to that ankle joint, like we see right here in the picture. Let's see what kind of anatomy we can remember here, guys. Some of your answers are right here on the left. Let's see how we do. Let's start with A up here. A is referring to a bone. What bone would A be referring to?
Tibia.
Tibia.
Not tibia. It's going to be the fibula. The fibula. And remember, that's okay because people always mix those up. Which bone is smaller? Which one's thinner? There's that skinny, thin bone, that small bone. You tell a little fib, tiny little fib, so that's the fibula. So if that's the fibula, I would be what?
Tibia.
Tibia. B is referring to this tarsal bone as a whole. What tarsal bone is B referring to?
Calcaneus.
That is the calcaneus. What if I pointed to this portion of the calcaneus right here?
Calcaneus tuberosity.
Calcaneal tuberosity. By the way, the right calcaneal tuberosity. There's our R up there. What about C? C is referring to a tarsal bone. What would C do?
Is that the cuboid?
That's the cuboid.
Oh,
That is the cuboid. Let me go to E. What is E shaped like?
Navicular.
Navicular. F is referring to this tarsal bone here as a whole. What tarsal bone are we looking at here? It's the one that's connecting to the tib fib, by the way.
Talus.
The talus. H is referring to a protrusion on the anterior surface of the tibia here.
A tibial platform.
What am I circling right here?
Oh, anterior tubercle.
Anterior tubercle, yes. Anterior tubercle. You that plafon you just referred to, right, by the way, is right here on this flat surface on the distal aspect of the tibia. That's a tibial plafon. And, yeah, or it can be called the Mortise Joints. I heard someone say Mortise for ankle joints. G's referring to a hole right here. What is G? Where I have my cursor.
Is that the
Sinus
sinus
tarsal.
Sinus tarsi or sinus tarsi, sinus tarsi, correct. What joint is formed between these two tarsal bones right here?
The Talus.
Think of your two bones. Calcaneal joints. Calcaneal joints. And last but not least, I saved this one because it's that important piece of anatomy I told you guys to remember that we can almost always see on these x-rays.
Tuberosity.
Yes. What
The
do you think?
fifth tuberosity.
That's the tuberosity of the fifth digit. Tuberosity of that fifth digit, which you can see on a lateral. As far as what position we're looking at here, guys, this is a right lateral ankle. Right lateral ankle. We got lots more practice coming up, though. Lots of practice images for you as we move forward here. Before we do that, let's take a break and realize what time it was. Let's take a quick little breather. Come back at 11:47 and we'll pick right back up.
What was F?
F was the talus.
Mr. Donahue, for the joints of the like for the foot, for like the phalanges and all of that, we'll put like right and left as well, right?
Yes, correct. And we're going to practice those here in a little bit too.
Thank you.
All right, let's get back. Let's get back to lecture here, everybody. Let's get our screens back on. Keep moving forward here. I want to say get the screens back on and we'll keep moving. All right, let's move right along here. Okay, so this is showing you right here just a few of that anatomy we just went over. This is what we call an axial view, as if we're just looking straight down at that foot, as if I cut the leg in half like a slice of meat horizontally, and I'm looking straight down at it. So we're looking straight down at that ankle joint area, specifically where the tibia and fibula are. If I remove the foot and looked up at it, I'm looking underneath the tibia here. That's that tibial platfon area. I'm looking up under the fibula. There's our fibula right here. You don't need to know this image. It's just showing you what it would look like on an axial image. When you get to CT and MRI, though, this is going to become a lot more important. When you do CT and MRI, you're focused very clearly on these axial views, but do not need to know this for your test. Good to know if you just want to, though. All right, so this is showing you the difference between what we call an AP ankle projection versus an AP Mortise projection. We're going to go over more of this when we get to the positioning aspect of things, because we have multiple views we do to open up the joint in different ways. Now, when we do a normal AP ankle projection, as we see projected right here, we can see the ankle joint quite well, or the Mortise joint. But when we do our actual specialized view called the Mortise projection, and just give you a simple explanation, that's essentially where we slightly rotate the foot medially. You'll learn this in lab, by the way, this week. We're going to open up that joint even further. Now, looking at these side by side, can you see the difference in the joint spaces looking at these side by side? In AP view, we see the ankle joints for the most part on the tibial aspect, but the ankle joint's actually quite closed where we have the fibula right here. The fibula is superimposing upon the talus, closing off the joint space on the lateral side. If I move over here, that Mortise joint or ankle joint is completely open from lateral to medial. You see what I'm talking about? Draw it for you. On an AP view, I see my ankle joint only near the tibia right here, where I put that red line. This area right here is closed off because the fibula is superimposed upon the talus. When I do my special Mortise projection and move over here, look at the ankle joint. From fibula all the way to the medial side of the tibula is completely open, which is why that we'll sometimes do these specialized views called the Mortise view to better open up that entire ankle joint and better visualize it. It's not making a lot of sense now. We're going to go over this in positioning as well. Do make sure you know on a regular AP, we only partially see the ankle joint. On a Mortise projection, we see the entire ankle joint opened. Now let's do some anatomy review. This is going to be a lateral foot, very similar to an image you may get on your tests. It's a beautiful lateral foot. I rather like that lateral foot. Let's see what we can name. We're going to start over here at the letter A. The letter A, even though there's two bones superimposed here, A is referring to this larger of the two right here. What would be this bone that A is pointing to?
Tibia. Right, tibia.
That is the tibia, correct. And let's assume, by the way, just so we practice, because I don't want you guys to do this on your test again, let's pretend there's a left marker right there. It says JD. The JD marker, it says left. So that would be the left tibia. Left tibia. Let's go to B. B is referring to the tarsal bone as a whole. What would B be?
The left calcaneus.
The left calcaneus. So C is referring to the very bottom aspect of that tarsal bone right here. What would C be, guys?
Tuberosity.
Calcaneus tuberosity or left calcaneus tuberosity.
The left calcaneal tuberosity. And get used to saying those directions, guys, where it's left or right. Get used to saying those two. Left calcaneal tuberosity. All right, so talking about another tarsal bone here. What would D be referring to?
Is that the left cuboid?
The left cuboid, very good. The left cuboid. E is that little important piece of anatomy once again. What is E, guys?
The fifth metatarsal tuberosity.
Or, well, the left tuberosity of the fifth metatarsal, to be specific. Left tuberosity of the fifth metatarsal. All right, let's see. Let's go to G. What is G? Your hand motion for G.
Left navicular.
Left navicular, yes, the left navicular. How about I? I is referring to the tarsal bone here on top.
Talus.
Left talus. Talus. Let's go to H. Now, H is referring to the joints. So there's three little lines going there. And I'll specify if I'm looking for joint or landmark, but what joint is H referring to?
Left talocalcaneus joint.
The left talocalcaneal joints. Now, what if I said, what's this little hole here? And I had landmark.
The sinus tarsi.
The sinus tarsi, but you didn't say the direction. The left sinus tarsi. The left sinus tarsi. I want y'all, you used to saying left and right. I don't want y'all to make that mistake again. Left sinus tarsi. Okay, now F is going to be a little peculiar here. I want to see what you say first, and then we're going to talk about F. F is referring to a tarsal bone. There's something unique going on with these tarsal bones, plural here.
It's the cuneiform, right?
It is. But you do know there's three cuniforms, correct?
Is it the left intermediate cuneiform?
It's superimposed.
What you hear what Jessie just said? They're superimposed. So on a lateral foot or lateral ankle, depending on how it's collimated, we're going to see the cuneiforms superimposed. So what do you think I would ask you to label on that? And when we're talking about superimposed,
Superimposed cuneiform.
you just simply would put the left superimposed cuneiforms.
Okay.
Because in the lateral view, they are all superimposed upon each other. You can see them all three, depending on how the foot's oblique as well. But you can simply put the left superimposed cuneiforms. It's for lateral view only, by the way, guys, because the AP and oblique, we can see all three.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
you said H was.
Say that one more time, Asbetta. You were cutting out.
You said H. What did you say? H.
H is the talocalcaneal joint.
Okay, because I'm looking at the book, and the book has it as subtalar joint.
It says what?
Subtalar, SUBALA joint.
Talar joint.
Uh,
Talocalcaneal is the correct terminology. It is a talar joint, but the actual terminology, and that joint extends from here all the way up to here. That's talocalcaneal joint. That's the terminology you need to know for that.
Thank you.
Welcome. So for F, guys, when we're talking about a lateral view, you can see superimposed cuneiforms for lateral only. Yes, Jonathan, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, is this, so this is, I know it's lateral, is this considered like lateral medial The way it's coming forward.
This would be a medial lateral.
Medial lateral. Okay.
Yes, but we're going to get to that in the positioning aspect when we get there. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see, what else, guys? There's some more stuff we can name here. If I was pointing to this, with the same concept of superimposition, what would you tell me that is?
Superimposed metatarsals.
You were exactly right, Daniel. Good. That's the left superimposed metatarsals. So once again, on a lateral view only, if I point to this area, you can tell me superimposed metatarsals. Clear some of his mess up here. What about this right here?
That's the sesamoid.
That is the sesamoid bone. It's a left sesamoid bone of the first digit. How about, what joint is that?
Mtp joints.
Correct. It's the MTP. And same concept for lateral only. You can say superimposed Mtp joints. Superimposed Mtp joints. Because you'll notice the difference between foot and hand, guys. Whereas the hand, we can get that nice fan lateral. On a foot, even though we can semi-fan the toes, we're not going to get as pretty of a spread as we get with the hands. Most of the time, it's going to be completely superimposed. So there are some different rules on labeling. On these lateral views, we're allowed to say superimposed with a lot of these joints in different bones. Superimposed metatarsals, superimposed MTP, superimposed cuneiforms. Once again, lateral only. Don't make that mistake. What else? What else? What is this joint here? It's a little hard to see. A little joint right here.
The IP joint.
So not IP. IP is right here, actually. A little hard to see. That would be superimposed DIP. Superimposed DIP. Now, when it comes to your labeling exam, guys, as usual, I'm not going to give you something where you can barely see that. I would make sure if I was labeling the joints on a lateral foot that they were clearly separate where you could see them. So I'm not going to be like, oh, what is this? Like, that's asking for much. But I would ask you, what is this? What joint is this? What are all these tarsal bones? But as far as the phalanges go, on the lateral, if I ask you for a joint, it'll be clearly free of superimposition so you can see it well. And I'll show you what that looks like as well when we practice more. Let's go to this one right here. This is a beautiful x-ray. Now what this is, let's assume this is left again, by the way. Actually, this is right. This is going to be a right. Let's put our R up here. This is a medial oblique foot. Right medial oblique foot. Now, if you remember, what do we do our medial x-rays for specifically? What are we trying to do?
Open up joint space.
Open up the joints.
Exactly right. Open up that joint space. So with that in mind, we are going to see a lot more of those beautiful joints on this x-ray. We got lots of good stuff we can label here. Let's see how we do. We're going to start from the top, make our way down. We're going to start at A here. A is referring to this spot right here. Trying to get this thing to go away up here so we can see. There we go. What is A referring to, guys?
IP joint
That is correct, but
of the first digit.
the
The right.
thank you. I want you to use that. I want you because remember, guys, I'm not giving any more freebies on that right and left.
Only for now. Only for now.
Okay, we'll see.
I'm not ready yet. Only for now.
We'll see. The right IP joint of the first digit, or you can write of the hallux. If you want to be extra fancy for Mr. Donahue, you can write the hallux.
You get extra points if you get that?
We'll see. That might be a bonus question. Okay, so let's go to B. Now, B is referring to a specific landmark on this bone. So I want you to be very specific when you name this. What is B?
Right body of middle phalanx. Oh wait, no, that's not the middle. But one of the phalanxes.
You're on the right track.
Is it the proximal?
Proximal phalanx.
Proximal phalanx. So the right body of the proximal phalanx, or digits. Right body of the proximal phalanx digit. C. C is referring to a joint. What is C?
Right MTP.
The right MTP. The right MTP stands for what?
Metatarsal phalange. Something like that.
You're right, metatarsal phalangeal joints. Very good. What about, I'm just going to throw a letter right here. What is that?
That's the right sesamoid of the
Right
first.
sesamoid bone of the first digits, correct. Okay. D is referring to a specific landmark on this bone. What would D be referring to, guys? When we break these down into 3 areas?
The head of the first metatarsal of the right side.
The right head of the first metatarsal. Yeah, you pretty much had it right there. The right head of the first metatarsal. Okay, what about E?
Same thing, but it's the body, right?
The same thing is not an answer.
That's what Tracy said. But instead, it's the body.
We have to work on this specificity here.
I just shortened.
The right body of the first metatarsal.
Yep.
And don't shorten it, guys. When you're studying, don't shorten it. And you know why? You get used to it, and then you're going through your test. You got nerves going, trying to think, and it slips your mind. Just small little things like that, and that's how you lose points quickly. So say it when you're studying. The right body of the first metatarsal. The whole word. I know it's redundant. I know it's a big mouthful, but it's going to help you remember it. I promise. How about F?
The base of the first metatarsal.
The right base of the first metatarsal. Let me just rearrange it a little bit for you. The right base of the first metatarsal. Good. Now G. Now this is going to be another one that's a little bit peculiar. Now if you remember, when we looked at that lateral view, what was superimposed? The cuneiforms. When we talk about an oblique foot, you'll notice we know there's 3 cuneiforms, but on an oblique, we only see 2. So you might want to put a big star and write this down. On a medial oblique foot, the medial and intermediate cuneiform is superimposed. The lateral cuneiform is seen by itself. And then on an AP foot, we see all 3. Regular AP foot, we'll see all 3 of those cuneiforms separated. So G would be the medial and intermediate cuneiform superimposed. The right medial and intermediate cuneiform superimposed. See, I broke my own rule there. The right medial and intermediate cuneiform superimposed. Okay, let's go to H. What is H? Your hand motion.
That's the navicular.
The navicular, because it arches. It's that navicular. All right, so I is referring to this tarsal bone right here. It's a little bit blurry. What tarsal bone is that?
The right talus.
The right talus. What about J?
Tuberosity.
Tuberosity.
The callus. Isn't that the callus?
Callus.
It's the right calcaneus tuberosity.
There you go. Calcaneus. Look, it's
The right calcaneal tuberosity. Well, you do get calluses on your feet. I mean, I guess that's, you're thinking of calluses on your feet? Callus is not an answer choice. Callus is a condition where your feet develop calluses, like those hard things on your feet. Yeah, The right calcaneal tuberosity. Right
It's
calcaneal
close.
is close.
It's close enough.
Close but no cigar. What about L?
The right cuboid.
The right cuboid. How about M?
Tuberosity of the fifth metatarsal.
The right tuberosity of the fifth metatarsal. Very good, very good. Well, let's move a little bit more distal. What joint are we referring to on N here?
The right fifth Mtp joint.
The right fifth MTP. Very good. What about O?
The right
PAP.
This is a landmark, not a joint.
the fifth distal phalanx, no, proximal phalanx of the
I don't know where we're going here, but that's going to be the right body of the proximal phalanx of the fifth digit. Right body of the proximal phalanx of the fifth digit. Okay? And we didn't name these yet. What is this right here? This is a joint. What is that one I just circled?
the third it's one of the IP joints. That's
It
what
is. It is.
Oh, the third PIP joint.
The third PIP, therefore, this is what?
Dip.
The dip, yes. The second dip. I think y'all's brains about had it.
Sonny, I have a question.
Yes.
Going back to letter O in the book, it has it as
In
proximal
about
phalanx
5
of the fifth digit of the right foot. Can that be one of the answers for it too, or do you want just body of?
I would like it to be the body of the right body of the proximal phalanx of the fifth digit. Completely specific. Yeah. No, it's like a sentence, but it's very important to be specific on that.
What did you say about letter N?
N?
Yes, sir.
N's the right fifth MTP.
Right fifth.
And just remember on all these guys, head, body, base. Head, body, base. Head, body, base. And even the very tip there, head, body, base. Very hard to see on the tip there, but it does also include a head, body, and base. Distal phalanx, middle phalanx, proximal phalanx. Metatarsal. Tarsals. All right, guys, we're going to stop right there because I think your brains have about had it. That's a lot coming at you. So keep in mind, guys, this is just foot and ankle. We have not got to tib fib yet. We have not got to knee. We have not got to femur yet. So it is a lot more coming at you. So it is vital that you start looking over this anatomy now. Start studying it now, or you're going to be overwhelmed by the time we get to our tests. And we haven't even thrown positioning into it either. There's a lot of positioning coming at us as well. So start studying now. Also, we're going to do our typical Play-Doh project coming up soon. Probably, I'm thinking on Friday for that. So get you some Play-Doh. I got a really great idea for this one. See how you do to compete for those points. And I will send you the PowerPoints, both PowerPoints today, by the way, thus far. And please let me know if you have any more questions. Also, I will start comprising some practice images for you guys as well moving forward through this anatomy. Enjoy the rest of your day. Let me know if I can be of any assistance. And I will see you guys on Wednesday.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Do you want us to go over the so any of those angles, like those 5 to 7 degree angles, or there's some that are like 15 to 20 degrees? Do we need to know those specific things?
I'm sorry. Say it one more time, Jonathan.
Do you want us to? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want us to go like know those angles that they have in certain spots? Like there's like some that are like 10 to 15 degrees and 15 to 20 degrees, so on and so forth. In the book.
You talking like with the anatomy?
Yeah. No.
No. There's a couple that we will memorize, but I'll let you know when we get to it.
Okay. And then what about like the ligaments, like in the knee? Like, you want us to? Are we gonna need to know all those too?
Yes, that's coming probably on Wednesday. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Unfortunately, yeah, we do. Yeah.
Sounds like fun.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Take care, everybody. See you soon.